Hi everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to this week's reading wrap up, which I'm going to not spare any further ado because I have 20 books to go over and I actually have a very limited time to film today. I have a birthday party to get to, so I can't take an hour and a half to go over these. So I'm just going to try to speak about the ones that I loved the most and just keep it moving. That just happens sometimes. If there's one of the books that you'd like to know more about from me, either check out my Goodreads or feel free to reach out to me and I can tell you more details about it if you want to know. But it was a really good reading week. I've read a few that I think are going to be future, like, just favorites, if not of this month, of the year, because they were really great. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first book that I finished was my buddy read with Crystal from Crystal's, but wow, I just totally forgot her channel name. You know who she is, beautiful bright red hair. I will put her down below, but we did this as a buddy read. I reached out to her at the beginning of the month, or a little while ago anyway, and was like, hey, I think you're cool. Let's do a buddy read together. And she was like, yes, I'd love to do that. And so I showed her a bunch of new releases that I picked because I wanted some encouragement to read one of those. And we picked Lies and Lullabies, which is the first book in a trilogy, which each book was by a different author. So the whole trilogy actually came out within 3 weeks. And we're actually going to read the next one together, which is by Devney something, I can't remember. But this one was a surprise baby, which I'm not always a big fan of the surprise baby trope. Sorry, I need to move this back a little bit. There we go. Very zoomed up on my face. However, this one actually is the only version of a like secret baby trope that I'm okay with. And that's when there is like a secret identity going on or something and the woman actually can't get in touch with the man, and it isn't through any fault of her own of like trying to keep the kid a secret. And so this case here we have, I just forgot her name, Kira, and Jonah. Is it Jonah? Jonas. And he is a rock star, and 5 years ago, he was kind of taking a break. He needed some headspace to write a really good album, and he went and stayed at this teeny tiny little town, and he met this girl, Kira, and they basically became like BFFs for the summer. And the night before he was about to leave, Kira actually asked Jonas to sleep with her because she had actually had some trauma in her life, and she wanted to be with someone who loved her or cared about her, and she knew would be kind to her. And Jonas has liked her this whole summer, but he didn't want to push her, and he liked having a female friend. And so that's it. And then he leaves, and they both kind of tried half-heartedly to get in contact with each other, and she actually had like no idea what his real name was until she saw him on the cover of a magazine 2 years after she already had their baby, and then she was too nervous to reach out to him. So it's like partially she didn't know who he was, and partially once she found out she was afraid, which is totally fair. And Jonas is such a sweet, kind man, and I really appreciated how he handles everything, and it just ended up being really sweet. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Heartless by Jade West. This is her new release. This is the beginning of a mafia trilogy. This is about a girl who's a part of a mafia family who just like treats her really, really horribly. And then there's this guy who he's kind of obsessed. He becomes obsessed with her after seeing her at a masquerade party. And so he begins kind of like stalking her. And she likes it. She kind of wants something to happen with it. And so this one had a cliffhanger because it's one of a trilogy that's going to be all about the same people. So I love Jade West. I read all of her books when they come out. This one for me is a good mix of her darker stuff. There wasn't quite enough steam in this one because it's the beginning. So I think once they're all out, it'll probably read kind of as like one book. Then I read Unteachable by Leah Reader. This is one of the books I got using Reader IQ or e-Reader IQ, which is this add-on you can add to your desktop when you're buying on Amazon to find books that are on sale. And this was a student-teacher relationship. It has my favorite trope. where it's a girl and a guy meet like the summer right before school, and then he's like a new professor. So he is 33 and she's 18. She's 18 when they meet as well. But this one was really good. I gave it 4 stars because I think it dragged a little bit in the middle, but I don't want to give anything away with this one, but it has some of my favorite things that happen in Student Teacher. Like, it isn't just all about the lust between the two of them. There is a more complex story going on, and I really appreciate those kind of student teachers when it's not just the lust between the two, but it was really good. Then I am tentatively beginning a reread of the Dark Hunter series by Sherrilyn Kenyon, and you guys, this one is considered like book 0 in the series, or a prequel kind of. This is Fantasy Lover. This is about Julian of Macedon, who is a love slave and is locked in a book that a woman can say his name to the full moon, and then that woman will basically conjure him from the book, and he will be her love slave for the full cycle of the moon. And he has been this for over 2,000 years. And this girl named Grace, her friend, her friend, what's her friend's name? Selena. Her friend Selena is the one who gives her the book, and Grace just like, she has a glass of wine and she like does it. She says his name 3 times and he appears. And she's actually kind of like, oh, what the fuck? This actually worked. Oh crap, now I have a naked man in my home. And she doesn't just want to use him for pleasure. And so she actually tries to get to know him. And it's actually been like 130 years since he's been conjured. And when he's stuck in the book, he's stuck basically in a sarcophagus. He can't move he can't move or eat or feel, and he's just kept alive in a state of stasis. This happened because he pissed off a god. He actually is I guess it would be a demigod, because he is the son of Aphrodite and a Spartan warrior. And it is Sparta, right? Yes. And yeah, it's I love this book. I first read this book back when I was like 14. And I remember thinking how sexy it was. Me and my friend Shauna, this was one of our favorite books. I had an old tattered copy of this. And reading it as an adult, number 1, it really held up to me. Number 2, I'm a little more like in Grace's shoes than I was when I was 14, because I think we're like the same age now, and Grace is just such a sweet person. And the way that she cares about Julian, this random naked man who just shows up in her apartment, and how she tries to help him because they're trying to find a way to break his curse. And the things that were done to Julian, he's not a perfect person. Like, there is a couple reasons why he was cursed, and he did act out to make this curse happen on himself. But the gods, they just like to fuck with everyone. And I know because I made it to about book 12 in the series at the time, and then I had like caught up, and then I just didn't keep reading because I fell off of reading paranormal for a while. So I'm excited to go back and read more. But I really like this. I gave it 5 stars. It was a wonderful reread, and I really enjoyed it. Then I read Hothead by Damon Suede. This was a male-male firefighter romance. This is a best friends to lovers. It was pretty good. I gave it a 4 star. It was really sexy, but it was a lot darker than I wanted it to be, but yet it wasn't a like dark romance. I don't know. But it's about 2 firefighters and their best friends. It takes place in New York, and it starts on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I think it's the 10th or the 15th. I can't remember. And yeah, so there's trigger warnings for that. And yeah, it's a friends to lovers. One of the guys has been hiding that he's gay his whole life, and the other one is just now kind of having feelings for his best friend. And it reminded me a little bit of him in certain ways, but it was like big, hot, hunky firefighters fucking. And this one was actually written by a man. And that's really cool. I've only read a few male-male romances written by men, and there was a lot about this that I could tell it was written by a man, having to do with, like, there's a lot less, like, gentleness happening. There's a lot more, like, bro time going on, and yeah. Learning the Tropes, a podcast that I really, really love. I'm listening to their backlist of episodes, and they actually did a podcast on this one. And it was one where they said, like, these characters are a couple of lunkheads, but even lunkheads need love. And that's really how it felt. Like, it was fun, but it also was angsty. And there is trigger warnings for, like, gay bashing in this because of the time that it's taking place and the career that these guys have. But I really enjoyed it. It was fun. Then I read Alien Breed by Penelope Woods. I gave this 2.5 stars. I'm just going to move on. I didn't like this at all. It wasn't, no. I read A Place in the Sun by R.S. Gray. This was a, like, vacation romance, kind of. This woman is going to travel Europe. She ends up in Vernazza, Italy, and ends up kind of staying there to help this widower rebuild his family's bed and breakfast and reopen it. And he's been a widower for 5 years. He's just about to turn 30, so he lost his wife at only 25. He's determined not to love again, even though his wife who passed really wanted him to love again because they're so young. She's like, you need to still find love. Like, don't let this be how it, ends for you when you're only 25. So it was really good. It was really sweet. It probably ranks near the top of my favorites of hers. It's my friend Shauna. She said that it is her favorite. And I don't like it better than Not So Nice Guy because the hate to love part of this lasted way too long for me. Like, it was like just drug on for a really long time. But it was really sweet. I liked them being in Italy, and I had a fun time with it. Losing the Light. We got to keep going. Then I read Giving It Up by Audra North. This is a novella length. It is about a woman who is, like, becoming a dominatrix for the first time for this police officer who needs someone to submit to. And so he hires her. She kind of volunteers herself because she really needs money for them to have a 5-week arrangement, and that she will be his femdom, his dom for these 5 weeks. Only she's never done it before. And because he's a police officer, he's like, I can't be paying you if there's sex involved. So this really just needs to be the submitting part of it. Of course, that's not going to last that long. But this, I gave this one 4 stars as well. Really just has to do because it's a novella. There wasn't enough to this couple. And the officer, like, his reasons for not wanting a relationship all had to do with he has a lot of family duties. And it just, like, went on way too long with him struggling with this for it to be a novella. Like, I needed it to move along. So this was really great. I have been looking for more male submissive, female dom books. And I do actually have another one to talk about in here as well. But this one really, like, did it for me with that part of it. But it was missing it for me with the relationship part of it, which is kind of funny. So then I read my first book by Tijan. I read Cole, which is a, like, secret mafia don book. So we have Cole, who he owns this apartment complex that our new heroine moves into. And it's this, like, apartment complex where you, like, own a floor of it. And Cole is there. And so she starts, like, seeing him around. And then eventually he kind of puts himself in her path to meet her. And they begin this, like, friends with benefits relationship where he says, like, it's dangerous for you to know who I am. And she, like, likes the danger of it. But it becomes clear that, oh, the kind of business you're in is the mafia. And she's ready to, like, go for it. And he's like, girl, you don't know what you're getting into. But she might already be more in it than she thinks. And it had nothing to do with Cole at all. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. I enjoyed this. I listened to this on Audible Escape as well. Then, though, I found out that Cole is actually kind of a sequel to a duology that was a few years old, called the Carter Reed duology, because I kind of knew it without even looking it up, because this character Carter Reed is mentioned a lot in Cole, and you can tell that he's like an important person. And sure enough, Tijan, excuse me, has a duology called Carter Reed. And so I've read the first one so far. I'm in the middle of the second one. I kind of got distracted by some other things, but I really, really liked it. Carter Reed, it's about this girl that she comes in, first chapter of this book is really graphic. This girl comes home to find her roommate being raped by her boyfriend, who her boyfriend is the son of a mafia drug lord or whatever. And so this girl, she's grown up on the wrong side of the tracks her whole life. Her and her brother, who her brother is passed now, but her and her brother, they lived it hard when they were young. And so she actually owns a gun. And so she shoots this guy who's raping her friend. But then this isn't so simple as like call the cops or get some help, because of who this person is that she killed. So there's this man named Carter Reed, who was her brother's best friend and was her friend when she was young. And they kind of got ripped apart from each other at one point, but she knows that he'd be able to help her because he actually works for a rival family to the one that this guy is from. So she reaches out to him and he steps in to help her, and then he's really happy to be reunited with her. In fact, he was just waiting for the right opportunity to reintroduce himself to her, and so it is their romance. And in Carter's book, kind of his goal is to like get out of the mafia, because he's done a lot to help these families get back on their feet. And see, that's where the book Cole comes in, because Cole, he is meant to take over the family, and Carter's trying to set things up in his book so that Cole can. So that's why you can tell, like when I was reading Cole, we keep hearing about this guy Carter who's really helped Cole out a lot. And then I was like, oh, there's a book about Carter and how that happened. So I also gave this one 4.5 stars. I know that I have explained that the first book, you know, that first chapter is very graphic, but actually I really think that Tijan has a good, these books were a really good like intro to Mafia, especially Cole, because we don't even like enter into the mafia part of it until like 60% into the book. For the first half of it, it's just kind of like a secret identity, friends with benefits situation going on. And obviously, like, I could tell that it's going to be mafia undertones. But I think it'd be a really good intro to Mafia if you want. And Cole is a standalone book. Again, I read that whole thing without having read Carter Reed, and I wasn't confused at all. It just has been nicer to read Carter. So then I finished a series that I was very excited to finish, and that is the Beards in Bondage series by Rebekah Weatherspoon. So I read Sanctuary, which is a book with another female dominant, and this woman, she actually also defends herself from an attack and kills the guy who's attacking her. But this guy works for some really powerful people, and so he's going to keep sending people after her, and no one's really taking it seriously. So her lawyer friend, he believes her, and he's like, hey, let me hide you in the city till we figure out what's going, or out in the country until we figure out what's going on. And so this friend, he actually has a twin brother who runs a farm, and so he brings her to stay with this brother, Silas. And this brother, they don't get along at all, and she kind of has to make like her own bargain with this brother, and they pretend to be dating so that the people in town, they pretend that they like met online, and now she's coming to visit him for the first time, and he is on the spectrum, and so he's very blunt and almost rude, and so it takes her a while to like figure it out, and they have this attraction building between them. Well, she actually used to be a dominatrix, so she's very specific about the kind of sex she likes to have. So when they reach the point where, like, the sex is gonna happen, she's like, all right, I really want to have sex with you. And he's like, yeah, I do too. And she's like, but I have a very specific way I like to have sex. I would need to be in control of everything. And he's like, wait, can I just interrupt? He's like, I would really love if you would dominate me. That sounds great. So they do that. And it's really cool because there's a lot of like discussion about it. This book also has, she's a plus size heroine and a female dominant, and he is he's on the spectrum. This book also has some really hot sex scenes in it. She's just the right amount of femdom to me too. Like, she doesn't overpower it in her, like, when they're not in scene, which I love. I love when, like, that part can be kept, like, in scene, and then you just see hints of it and everything else, and it's not, like, overpowering. Then I read Harbor, which this one, I remember when this one came out, because it didn't come out that long ago, and I was excited because it's a menage, but it has a very interesting setup. We have this woman who she had a fiance that she was about to marry, and then we have this gay couple who had a they had a partner, and who was a woman, and so their partner and her fiance were cheating on them with each other, and they were actually murdered because of reasons. And so they both her and then this couple find out that their significant others were cheating when they die. So lots of trauma right there. So one of the partners, he ends up wanting to reach out to her to just kind of, so they could meet each other, because they're really the only ones who would understand what happened to each other. And right away, there's some serious chemistry between all three of them. And they're actually one of them is a dominant, and the other one, he's a switch. And then, and one of them's a submissive, and then their partner, she had been a switch. And so they kind of invite her to spend a weekend with them. Well, first they meet each other, and then they're like, I don't want to see you. Like, I can't see you again for a while. And so there's like, they meet, they talk through some of their stuff, and then there's like a 6-month gap, which felt realistic because it's like we still need to grieve about what's going on, but the guys are kind of just waiting because they really kind of felt a connection with her. And so then she gets invited to come stay for a weekend with them and see if she's into them and if she's into BDSM. So I loved this. I love menages with BDSM involved. I've read 2 other ones, Full Mountie by Sadie, or by Ainsley Booth and Sadie Heller, as well as the American Royals, or the New Camelot series by Sarah Simone. So good. I mean, obviously Katie Roberts books too, but these ones had more story going on than like just the sex part of it. And I loved it. Rebekah Weatherspoon writes amazing. So this was another case of like lots of diversity. I think they're all Black. It was awesome. I loved it. I just wish, so I gave both of those, well, okay, I gave Sanctuary 5 stars. I gave Harbor 4.5 stars because the book with the most people in it had the least amount of pages, and that just frustrates me. Like, her books are too short. Ugh, the books are too short for me. Like, this one had the most points of view, and it had the least amount of pages, and that just boggles my mind. She's not the only author to do this. Like, I get it. But I needed at least 50 more pages spread out between 3 people. That's only like 1 or 2 chapters more per person, because it just was not enough for me. I needed there to be more. So then I started a new series, and I read The Submissive by Tara Sumi. This, I had never heard of her at all. Nobody had. Maybe she was brought up when I asked for BDSM Rex in like a group page, but I had never heard of her. This series has like 10 books in it, but only certain ones focus on this main couple. So The Submissive, it's about this girl named Abby King, and she actually turns in an application to become the submissive for Nathaniel West, who is a billionaire businessman, because they're always billionaires. Apparently they're the only ones who can do kink, is super rich people. And he actually like takes applications for it to really vet everybody out. It's really great. Now, she's never been anyone submissive before, but she really, really wants it. And he agrees to give her a chance. There's more behind that. And it's good. The first one, though, I only gave 3.5 stars because number one, Nathaniel's not being honest about who he is to her. And so this seems like it's her pursuing him, but there's some other things going on, as well as he does not make this relationship very safe in the beginning. He does a couple of things that are major red flags, and because he knows she's new, he gets away with them. Number one, he makes a safe word, relationship ending. No, run, get away, far. He doesn't say, like, please don't ever use your safe word. Obviously, he would never say that. However, he makes it contingent upon the relationship. So when they have their test weekend, if she safe words at all during that weekend, it's over. And that is such a manipulative thing. He doesn't go intense enough that she even like contemplates using it, but ooh, it just frosted my cake. I was so annoyed. Now, I ended up then reading the sequel, which is called The Training, and we find out at the end of the Submissive that there was reasons why he was being such a douchey dom, because like they tell you, like he's been a dom for 10 years. He's had many different partners. He's had a few like long-term partners. And I was like, really? People have just been letting him get away with this? Is it just because he's rich? Well, it turns out that he's only been doing that to her because of these other reasons. So I was pretty annoyed with Nathaniel. So here's the thing though then. There's the second book called The Dominant, though, which is literally the submissive from the dominant's point of view. And looking at the reviews of people, they said, like, you don't need to read The Dominant because it's just every single scene exactly from his point of view. And I'm not a huge fan of that most of the time. So I skipped forward to and also the point that we got to at the end of this book where he finally explains himself is I was like, I don't want to read The Dominant and just listen to him justifying his shit the whole time. Like, we finally explained it. And Abby has decided she accepts it. That's her prerogative. And then they begin a dating relationship in The Training where they reset their whole relationship. Like, they sit down and talk through everything. They have a system of safe words. They have times where she's collared and time where she's not. This isn't a 24/7 situation anymore. And then I really loved it. And I gave the second one 4.5 stars because then it was everything I wanted and more, because it was more about them discovering the things that both of them like together. And after each session, once she's uncollared and no longer in subspace, they'll reconvene in the library and talk about what they liked and what they didn't like. And the communication was perfect. So I just feel like the author, like I get what she was trying to do with this, but if people read this and get like really pissed off, they're not going to give another book another chance. Because he is a very unsafe dominant in this book. And I don't care what his reasons are. You're messing with people's health and well-being when you put them in situations like that. And I just didn't like it. But I'm reading the third book right now, which is technically the fifth book. Because like I said, they'll have 2 books and then they have one about another person. And then they have a book and they have about another person. And currently I'm only reading the ones about them as a couple. So I'm on book 5, but it's really like book 4 in that series. But I probably will read the ones about other people. But the thing is, these books aren't on sale anywhere. You have to buy them for full price on your Kindle or full price on Audible or full price in the store. And so I'm just buying them like one at a time. All right. So then I read Once Upon a Wedding Night. I read This Is a Buddy Read with Shae over at Shae Geeks Out. We did 2 buddy reads together this month, and the first one was great. We read Bewitching last week, and then we read this week. This is the first book written by Sophie Jordan. I think it was written in 2006, and I hated it. I gave this book 2 stars, maybe 2.5 stars. Ooh, and this hurt. However, like Sophie Jordan, this is the 4th book of hers I've read. Previously, the only 3 I read were in the Duke series or whatever. And I liked 2 of them, didn't like 1 of them. I'm super excited for the Duke Effect to come out. Very excited to read it. This one did not work for me. Okay, so we have this woman. She was married for like 6 or 7 years to a man who didn't sleep with her. So she's still a virgin. And he's recently died. And so his brother, which is Nick, he is a gaming lord. He owns, you know, he's all those things. And he finds out that he's now the Duke. Is it a Duke or an Earl? Not sure. He doesn't even want this, but she's also afraid of losing it to him. And so her and her aunt, it's mostly her aunt who comes up with this idea, and Meredith just goes along with it. She decides to pretend to be pregnant, and then they're going to buy a baby. And it's really told as kind of funny, like the way that it comes together. She's like, well, we'll just buy one. We'll be giving a kid a whole life, and we'll make sure that it's a boy so that you will get to be the guardian of this kid's stuff. And if this was anybody else, like, this woman would be a villain to do this to this guy, to take everything. Granted, it's supposed to be okay because we know that she's been really mistreated by her last husband, and she has no reason not to believe that Nick would be a horrible person. Sure, that's fine. Sounds better in concept, because we know Nick, and the thing is, Nick was already cheated out of his, like, stuff once, because his father, he divorced his mother, and his mother ended up having to be a prostitute. And so his older brother was like raised as the heir, and Nick was treated horribly and had watched his mother sicken and die from the life she had to choose. And so then, even though he doesn't want this, you know, when he finds out, because he finds out about midway point through the book, and then he is going to banish this woman, which he should. He didn't know her beforehand, and then she was going to try to trick them into thinking she was pregnant and put someone else's baby as his heir. I was totally on Nick's side for the first half of this book. Really, I was, because I wanted to like Meredith. I wanted to see her try to reason with him, but she just got super defensive with him and was like, how dare you, you know, question my honor and all these things. And I'm like, woman, you started with a lie, and it's a bad one. Like, it's a bad lie. But then Nick, who was like, he was really roguish and, you know, not the nicest guy, but when he thinks she's pregnant, he's like, I don't care if it's not a boy, I'm still going to take care of you. If you lose the baby for some reason, I'm still going to take care of you. Like, he's saying all these things, and number one, she's just deciding she doesn't believe him, and it's just like, well, he might change his mind, and then whatever. And then when she gets caught, because of reasons, I won't spoil those if you want to read this for some reason, whatever, then he gets mean. And so now we're supposed to be on her side because she feels bad, and he's just like, no, like, you tried to trick me. I don't owe you anything. And it takes him quit thinking on the aunt's side. So he's going to give her a settlement, which is more than his mother got, and kick this woman out and be like, goodbye. Well, the aunt is like, you know, she's going to carry your name forever unless you marry her to someone else. So you should give her a season, because she never really got to have one. She was married off to your brother right away. And so the aunt is able to convince him to, like, give her an outing and give her a season to try to find a husband to take her away. Well, then the story is supposed to be that he doesn't want to see her marry anybody else. But they have a hate-to-love relationship till they're at the altar. I mean, because here's the thing, too. This is called Once Upon a Wedding Night. The wedding night between the two of these guys is at, like, 80% into the book, and they still are kind of hating each other. And then all of it got resolved in the last chapter, which that's the part about Sophie Jordan that I am seeing as a pattern, is she rushes through the ending. She's done that in 3 out of the 4 that I've read, and there's, like, no epilogue. So it rushed through the ending and then was over. There wasn't even a 1-page epilogue at the end. Now, I know not everyone wants that or whatever, but after the stuff these people had been through and how much they'd lied to each other and mistreated each other, I kind of needed an epilogue like 5 years later to see what was going on with them. And it was just over. So this was rough. It hurt, but I only gave it 2 stars because I don't recommend it to anyone. And I know Sophie can do better. I was just sad that the debut didn't make me happy at all. It was kind of a bummer. Then I read The Rivalry by Nikki Sloane. This was the, like, last Nikki Sloane I hadn't read. It is a college sports romance, which a couple of Nikki's other books, she has characters who are, like, young adults. But this one was, they meet at mutual friends' weddings. And they really hit it off, and they, like, make out, and they're probably going to go home and have a one-night stand. And then the dude, he gets called away to help with a drunk friend and to take care of things. And then they don't end up, like, exchanging number. Like, I can't remember what happens. I think she gets his number, or no, he puts his number in wrong into her phone. And so she thinks he did it on purpose when really he didn't. He'd accidentally, like, typed it and, like, hit backspace instead of enter, which I've definitely done before. So she ends up asking her friend for his number, and the friend who is his, so he was the one that he was there for his friend. She was there for her friend who got married. And he kind of, like, hates her a little bit. Not really, but to play a joke on this girl, he's like, hey, so he lives a couple hours away from you, and on Saturday nights, he's always at this one bar. So she shows up at the bar to surprise him, looking super hot, and it turns out that it's a Michigan State bar. And she is a cheerleader for Ohio State. So she walks in, and she's in a horror place, because they have a huge rivalry, which I'm not aware of this rivalry in real life because I'm not from those schools, so I don't know. And so she walks in and she's like, oh fuck, he's a lineman or what? And he's actually the reason that these two lost their last, like, rival game that they had against each other, because he's so fast that he got the touchdown that won it, and she's a cheerleader for the other team. So she sees him in there and she's like mad at her friend's husband because he knew what she was walking into and he kind of set her up. But then the guy is just like, why is this such a big deal to you? Well, it turns out that our heroine, she was born at the football field. Like, her dad was a coach for Ohio State, and her mom actually went into labor when she was at the game. And so it's a big deal to her. And she's like, my family will disown me if I brought you home. And she's like, our school, like, if our teams found out we were dating each other, we'd be in so much trouble. And so it's a cute one. It's super sexy because it's Nikki Sloane. Oh, it's super sexy. It's also a book where, I love reading books like this, where she has been faking orgasms, like, the whole time she's been having sex. And he's able to, like, get her off without ever even, like, knowing this is a thing. And so she is just, like, really enamored with that about him, where he doesn't even question it. Like, they have sex and she, like, doesn't come. And so then he's like, just 1 second. And he, like, goes down and, like, finishes it. And she's like, feels bad that she was too much work for him. And I don't know. There's just something about, I love when that conversation comes up and he's just like, okay, any guy you're sleeping with who doesn't care if you have a good time or not, fuck him. Like, don't fuck him, because you shouldn't be sleeping with that person. So I love that about him. And I just love this guy because he really, really is, like, trying to convince her to be with him. But then also at some point, he's like, hey, like, this rivalry was cute, but, like, I'm serious. Like, I want to be with you, and I need you to stop using this rivalry as an excuse, because it's hard to date you when you're 2.5 hours away from me and when all these people don't want us to be together. So if you're not in, then I need you to bow out, and just, because I don't have the time for it. But I gave it 5 stars because she's amazing. Gotta keep going here. So I read The Red Scot by Twyla Turner. Only gave this 3 stars. I was really excited to read this one. This is a plus size girl. This is a woman who's been attacked, and she has a girl gang. There's a girl gang. She's actually saved by these girls when her, the guy that she's tutoring, she wants to go on a date with him, and he attacks her, and she gets away from him, and her friends, she makes some friends who, like, kind of stop this guy. And anyway, so it's 10 years later and she's still terrified of men. So she joins a gym to start getting, like, desensitized to men. So here's the things that are wrong with this, and I have to go quick. I need to get going. Oh my gosh, I'm talking too long. She's terrified of men to the point where if she bumps into one, she freaks out, which it's been 10 years. Okay. We're 12 years, because she's 30. She was 18 when this happened. She's 30. Still so terrified, all right? Now, come on, guys. I'm not judging anyone's trauma. And I'm not judging her. This is a fictional person. The fact that she'd be, like, literally so terrified of even bumping into some guy. It's not like she's been living in a hole. Like, she's a businesswoman. She has her own business, and she's still, like, so afraid. But then we have our hero who he owns this gym. He's an MMA fighter. He's a big, muscly Scottish guy. And he's super awkward with women. So he's had lots of hookups, but it's all women who want the fame or the body or whatever. And he sees this woman, she's a curvy, big woman, come into his gym, and he's like dumbstruck. But he's bad at talking to women, and she's also terrified of men, especially big, muscly, hunky men. And so her friends take it upon themselves to educate this guy about how to approach their friend. This woman doesn't even know how sex happens. She's 30, and it's set in 2018. I'm sorry, I don't believe it, Twyla Turner. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. This woman works in website development. The internet and online is her business. And there is a sentence, I put this in my Goodreads, where she says she knew a penis had to get hard to get into a vagina, but she'd never seen it happen before. She's 30 fucking years old, okay? I've known how sex has happened since I was 12, okay? That attack didn't happen to her till she was 18. So you're saying she'd never even like seen or talked about sex before 18? Anyway, but the male character was so cute and just so patient and willing to fight for her. Like, I gave it 3 stars for the hero alone, but honestly, I felt that this woman who was a victim was living as a victim and just fit a lot of the stereotypes of a victim. So I don't know. Yeah, that might be harsh to say, but read it for yourself and tell me that I'm wrong, because I'm not bashing victims in real life who would have whatever trauma you would have. That is valid. But when I'm reading a story, it was like the author picked all the like weirdest parts of a trauma a person would have and wrap them up and put them on this woman. And then I'm also supposed to feel woman power and like empowered by her, when I just was like, girl, you need to be in a mental asylum. Like, if you're that scared, like, you need to be on anxiety medication. You need help. Like, that's what I was feeling. And so it was hard to be swept up in there. Because then once the sex starts happening, which is, you know, takes its time, it is some of the dirtiest, sexiest sex ever. And I'm like, all right, this woman wouldn't even let a man bump into her. And now she's ready to bump all the ugly that there is. So, I don't know. Grading Curves. This was a novella by Sierra Simone. This was a teacher and student. It's college though, and it's a 23-year-old boy, or not boy, it's a 23-year-old guy and a 30-year-old woman. They meet at a tattoo parlor when she's getting a tattoo, and then when school starts, he is going back to college after having to miss out on it. He's going back to it, and it's a novella. It was cute. Age gap. Then I DNF'd Forbidden by Elizabeth Lowell. Won't talk more about that. I'll talk more about it in our live show for that. I read Birdie by Dee Garcia. This is a book that I read because of TikTok. And Dee Garcia is a author of color. Her character gets in trouble for selling drugs or collecting the money for drugs, and her partner at the time, it's his fault, and then after 5 years in prison, this new prison card comes in and there's interaction. So this is a prison romance, first one of those I've ever read. It was pretty interesting. It has a cliffhanger. The second one is coming out very soon. The author, it was actually already supposed to be out, and the author had to postpone it a few weeks just for like mental health reasons and stuff. But there is a second one coming out. So this one had like a bit of a cliffhanger, but it was super good. Then I read Torian by Eden Summers. This is another book I read because of TikTok. This one had a serious cliffhanger to it. And so here's the thing. So this is book 3 in the series. And so I knew I'd be skipping to it, but it's a mafia series. And I thought that they were kind of like standalones. And this one, definitely not. And then the next 2 books in the series still aren't the sequel to the one that I read. And then the next one coming out in January is supposed to wrap up the one that I read. But this is a Captor Captive. This is an FBI agent and a mafia don. And she is trying to bring him down, and he's really into her, as well as he's trying to take his father down, because his father actually was already in prison and then he escaped. So he's trying to take his father back down because his father sucks. And Cole Torian is his name. He ends up kidnapping this FBI agent to witness him taking down his father. And he wants to work together. This was great. I gave it 4 stars. It maybe would have been 5 except for the cliffhanger. So we'll see how, when that one wraps up in January, how it goes. I plan to read the rest of them in this series. Now that I've read the 3rd one, I'll go back and read the others. Yeah, I really liked it. Okay, I had to speed through those last couple because it is getting late. I'm losing my light and it's time to go. But it was a great week. I read 20 books. I don't know what's going on with me. They were great. I'm excited for the next week. Thank you so much for watching this. I put up new videos almost every day. I'm going to stop saying 3 to 4 a week because sometimes it's 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. Yeah, make sure you check out my socials down below. Check out my Amazon list of the books that I'm recommending, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.